Good evening, it's the Civil Savage 76, otherwise known as Rex Knickerbocker. I've come to you tonight with reading that I had to do for myself because I needed to read up on why exactly everything is unfolding the way it is in the Eastern Bloc states, the Ukraine, etc. So this is what I've gathered. I'm going to share it with you now. Ukrainians had endured over the past 8 years as a result of NATO promising not to advance toward the east, just the exact opposite. Let's begin, shall we? NATO, who backs Ukraine, had no qualms about bombing Yugoslavia and destroyed things not limited to military installations including hospitals, schools, bridges, private businesses, and industrial plants under the pretenses of a potential genocide. NATO pumped money and weapons into Georgia before then bombarding peacekeepers and civilians with those said weapons. Serbia and Kosovo were also taken away by Ukraine-backed NATO aggression many years ago when I was a child. NATO also invaded Libya, displacing millions using migrants. Kiev also started attacking Eastern Ukrainian Russians for virtually nothing besides hoping to get rid of what was more or less a very corrupt government. Where were your tears? Where were your tears for Ukraine when Kiev shut off water and electricity to Russian-backed Crimea? Where were your virtue signaling pro-Ukrainian tears and all the rest of it when 48 anti-Maidan Ukrainian protesters were rounded up into a union trade house in which they burned alive, and then survivors were sequentially beaten and shot for trying to escape what is essentially the feudal Ukrainian oligarchy? Where were the virtue signaling tears for all this kind of stuff? Were you going to support that? Were you going to necessarily blindly support another nation you know nothing about? Well, listen to this. The Alley of Angels Memorial. Did you support the pro-Ukrainian state after understanding that every name on this said memorial of the 91 children aged 1 to 18 etched on it was a child of Donbas who was murdered by Ukrainian NATO-backed military units that heavily shelled the Donetsk People's Republic region in the east? Did you support pro-Ukrainian the pro-Ukrainian complex when children were purposefully cluster bombed by Ukraine military units at the children's beach in Zagreb? The mainstream media never told you about such things, did they? Because they kept you fed with trash distractions like ice cream cones and dancing pink Peppa the Pig, not to mention Pepe Le Pew. Did anyone perhaps recall the deep state within America, along with Ukrainian Khazarian mobsters and oligarchs alike tied to Hunter Krakow, who has also been pumping billions of dollars worth of arms into the country as a means for pro-Ukraine civilians to attack the separatist Ukrainian Republic in the east, Donetsk and Luhansk? Why is Boris Johnson, Brandon Poopcrack, Emmanuel McCall, and many others alike virtually signaling for a pro-Ukrainian state and their suffering, and virtue signaling to get them out of their suffering while they coerce them into the reliance of IMF loans? NATO is a hostile military alliance that seeks to advance towards the east against the People's Ukrainian Russian separatist region as a showing of their refusal to partake in the Minsk agreement. Imagine having a neighbor that wants to shoot you because you don't want to become a member of a violent military alliance that is known for aggressively advancing, destroying, and killing any region within the Eastern Bloc states that refuses to become a part of NATO, which is not, and Russia is not a member, by the way. I wonder why the mainstream media is using them as a punching bag now. Real interesting, real interesting. You gotta love studying. This was Artie's study hour. I'll have more later.